Okay, welcome back to my final installment of fractions, which today I'm going to talk about dividing fractions. Well, dividing fractions, it's basically the same approach as you're doing with multiplication, except there's one step we're going to change. Now, let's look at the first one. It's 1/2 divided by 1/3. So what I'm going to tell us to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show us this method. So you keep the 1/2, and then we're going to take the 1/3 and we're going to flip it and make it into multiplication. And that's the same rules applies. You'd just say 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 1 is 2. So the only difference between division and multiplication is flipping or taking the reciprocal and then making a multiplication. Let's take a look at 3/4 divided by 1/2. And remember, at any point during this video, you can always pause it and work it out and then check yourself. So let's do this. We keep the 3/4 the same. Then I'm going to flip the fraction and make it multiplication. Now looking at my rules that I showed us last time, 2 goes into 4 twice. So then when you multiply this out, this also gives you 3/2. Now, not all answers are going to be 3/2. These are just coincidences. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. This is getting to more complicated fractions, not simple fractions. So what we're going to do is we're going to still keep the 7/12, but now I'm going to flip the 24/49. And now I'm going to look and see, okay, can I cancel anything out? Well, 7 goes into 49 7 times. 12 goes into 24 2 times. So my answer is going to be 2/7. So remember to always keep the 7/12 the same, and then take the 49/24 and flip it, or take the reciprocal. And then by doing that, by taking the reciprocal, that means we're changing it to multiplication. Okay, now let's take a look at if you have a negative. Well, right off the bat, since I only have one negative, I know my answer is going to be negative. But I'm going to still keep that negative 6/11. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it, the 33/12. $11 goes into that 3 times. 6 goes into 12 2 times. And since I've got that negative, it's going to be negative 3/2. Now, what about if you have a negative 1/5 divided by, say, a negative 6? Well, right off the bat, I know 2 negatives make a positive, so I know my answer is going to be positive. So now what we need to do is we need to make this negative 6, since it's not a fraction, we can put it over 1. Now it is a fraction. So now that is negative 1/5 times negative 6 times negative 1/6, because we're doing the reciprocal. So like I said, 2 negatives make a positive. So that's saying 1 times 1 is 1/30. A typical mistake would be is to have the answer just to be 30. But remember, it's 1/5 times 1/6. It's going to be a small number. What about if you have it's the same concept. If you do have a whole number and you're divided by something, then make it over 1. And then what that means is that's negative 7/1 times. We flip the 14/3 to make it 3/14. Seven goes into that 2 times. So my answer is going to be negative 3/2. Now, sometimes it's written like this. This is the same thing as 4/5 divided by 6/7. So we can treat this just like what we normally have been doing. And then all I'm going to do is take 4/5, keep it the same, and then I'm going to flip the fraction. And then 2 goes into 4 twice, 2 goes into 6 3 times. Then say 2 times 7 is 14. And 5 times 3 is 15. So I'm not going to do anything with the top or the numerator, but then I'm going to flip and make it 30 over 55. And then that's twice. Now in this case, 11 goes into 22 twice. 11 goes into 55 5 times. So my answer is negative 4/5. Moving on. Now, what about if I have 18 over 5? But now, remember, make that over 1, 6 over 1. So now I can go ahead and make a multiplication and flip the fraction. And now I can kind of back myself up and say 6 goes into 8 3 times. So my answer is going to be 3 times 1 is 3 over 5, which is 3/5. Same thing with a negative 7. Make that negative 7 over 1. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that fraction. I'm going to make that negative 4 over 1. 2 negatives make a positive. So all I'm going to do is say 7 times 4 is 28. I don't have to worry about 1s on the bottom because 1 times 1 is 1. This is my answer. Okay, negative 1/8 times, okay, treat that as 2 over 1, so I'm going to flip the fraction. And then all I'm going to do is say it's negative 1 times 2 times 8 is 16. So this is my answer, negative 1 over 16. Feel free, like I said, at any point of this video to stop it. Go back as many times as you need. Okay, what about if you have negative 1/6 over negative 1/2? Well, in this case, I keep the negative 1/6, but then I want to take my negative 2, put it over 1, and 2 negatives make a positive. And then 2 goes into 6 3 times. So it's going to be a 1 over 3 is my answer. Now, finally, I've got the zeros. Now, this confuses a lot of people. Now, think about this for a second. Whatever you have divided by 0 makes no sense. This is what we call, you get an error if you put it on your calculator. Anytime you divide by 0, it's called undefined. This could also be written as, let me just go ahead and write this too. This could be written as 1/8 divided by 0. This can also be written as 0 over 1/8. Now in this case, this would be 0. So please feel free to go back on any one of these set of videos, these 5, and review them. And go back and practice as many times as you need. Thank you very much for listening.